I did not like Oppenheimer. Now, I don't think it's an objectively bad movie or anything, far from it. I definitely can see that there's a lot this film does right, and I don't blame people for really loving it. When it comes to me and my tastes in movies, there was a good amount of things going against Oppenheimer. I simply was not ready for a 3-hour movie at the time. I generally don't love historical or biographical movies, but probably the biggest thing holding this movie back was that it was directed by Christopher Nolan. Now, criticizing Christopher Nolan isn't really an uncommon thing to do. I do think a lot of people generally respect and love the guy's work, but his stuff is not necessarily for everyone. I actually hear some people who don't like his movies too much really like Oppenheimer in particular. Like a lot of people, I don't hate his movies. I actually enjoy most of them, but I really don't like his style of filmmaking. I don't know if this is going to be the most well-structured video, because it's pretty hard to put all my feelings together, but I guess I'll start by saying Christopher Nolan's movies feel like movie trailers. They're very loud, very grand, and sometimes can be pretty obnoxious. Nolan's sound mixing is definitely kind of a meme, right? Like, there's always loud music playing in almost every scene, and look, I get it. I know music is there to enhance a scene, to give life to one, and it definitely should. But in Nolan's films, it almost feels like a crutch to me, like he's trying to mask some of his clunky dialogue, which is probably my biggest issue with his movies. I don't think Christopher Nolan really knows how to keep an audience's attention, so he just kind of plays the most suspenseful score in the background to give it this grandness, this epic feeling. Take away the music, and what is this scene? It's a boring exposition dump. Now, thankfully, Oppenheimer is a bit more straightforward in its overall plot in comparison to a lot of other Nolan films, but like his other movies, it still falls into giving you lots of exposition, and it can feel very overwhelming. Look, as a Hunter x Hunter fan, I really don't think I should be complaining about exposition this badly. And look, exposition is a necessary asset in storytelling, and I don't think it has to be inherently bad. But I don't think Christopher Nolan really knows how to do exposition in a way that's engaging, or I guess doesn't feel like exposition. Look at Spider-Verse. Yes, completely different movie, with Spider-Verse not being nearly as complicated as your average Nolan film, but I do think that this is a really good recent example at how to keep an audience's attention. Not trying to over-explain the details, giving a clear idea as to what is happening with the multiverse, not only in its dialogue, but in its visuals, showing the different multiverses. There is a good connection between the visual language and the verbal language. Not only that, but the dialogue itself feels very natural. There are snappy little remarks and quips. You feel so much of their personality in how they say things to make these scenes feel like the characters are actually talking to each other and not the audience. Oppenheimer definitely goes further with its visuals when characters are talking, and I actually do really like Oppenheimer's visual aesthetic more than a lot of his other previous movies. But for the most part, it does kind of feel like clunky exposition, and the movie doesn't do all too much to make it feel seamless, and I think the same can be said for Inception or Tenet. However, I do very much appreciate them for every so often using visual demonstrations when they're talking. I guess it's just harder to mask these when you're dealing with such high concepts in these movies. Nolan definitely has a tendency to make his films really grand and big, which is fine, but the higher the concepts, the more he feels the need to explain everything. And maybe that could just be the case of me generally preferring films that embrace high concepts without really feeling the need to explain them all and just letting you interpret them however you want. But what's weird with a lot of Christopher Nolan movies is that they explain in such direct detail what is going on, yet you are still completely lost in what is actually happening. In Inception, you are constantly being fed information, and yet it can still feel like a chore to keep up with, and it still leaves certain things ambiguous, which on paper doesn't sound like too bad of an idea, and some people might like Inception for this reason, but I just feel cheated when the movie feels like it's constantly explaining everything to me and directly telling me what is happening, yet I still come out the movie not knowing a thing, and that could just be a me problem. It's hard to describe, but I guess it's like you have so much context that you're just left with no context, nothing they say really sticks. It wouldn't be so bad if so much of the movie's dialogue wasn't just exposition. I'm sorry if I'm generalizing here, but from my experience, more often than not, it feels like Nolan uses dialogue and a select chunk of his characters to feed the audience information and nothing more. Which is sad to me because I've seen that there are so many more creative ways to go about a script than just telling. So many characters feel so flat and boring because all they do is explain this and that, and this is how dreams work, and this is how a wormhole works, and this is how you make a bomb, and the theme of the movie is love. Did you know that? Did you catch that the theme of this movie is indeed love? Did you know that one of the main themes of The Dark Knight is dying a hero or living long enough to see yourself become a villain? Wait, you already knew that? Okay, but just to make sure, let's have Harvey Dent say in the movie that exact line, practically spoiling his entire character development in plain sight, just in case you didn't catch that. And I guess it just doesn't help that the acting in his movies isn't really my cup of tea. Now, there are some great performances, definitely. I think Robert Downey Jr. kills it in certain scenes of Oppenheimer. Leonardo DiCaprio, always great. I don't think it's an actor problem, more so the way the scenes are directed. I think about a lot of different scenes in Nolan's films, and I don't like the way a lot of characters communicate in their mannerisms. Like, okay, let me compare some scenes from Nolan's films versus scenes from other films I like.
Telecommunications project.
I wasn't aware we had any government contracts.
Lucius, I'm playing this one pretty close to the chest.
Want some bacon?
No, man, I don't eat pork.
Are you Jewish?
No, I ain't Jewish.
I can't stop. Big machine, too many wheels turning. We're going public.
I understand.
I remember you. And I'll admit I was a little curt that night.
Kurt?
Okay, I was an asshole.
90% wouldn't know or 10% wouldn't know. I also have a discretion setting, Cooper.
Anybody asks you where you got it in Vegas playing craps. All right? Yeah? Yeah?
Do you see the difference? Like, it's hard to say, but the others have this energy that I like from these performances, right? Even in mundane scenes, they always feel human. In Nolan movies, they don't feel robotic, but they aren't that organic either. It feels less static and more like these movies are trying to take themselves so seriously that I end up losing investment and these conversations just kind of feel like boring adult conversation. I guess this is a bit more of a personal preference thing, but I like a bit of fun in my movies, right? Like, I don't want fucking MCU comedy in my Nolan films, oh no. But I would like it if the characters had a bit more fun, you know, a bit more snarky, a bit more personality. You do get a few cute scenes here and there, but not enough for me to really love these characters involved. And yeah, Christopher Nolan was never a character-driven director. It was always spectacle for him. So I guess that in itself makes me not really like his directing style, since characters are just as important to me as visuals. That is something that I really love. But the thing is, he's had great characters and character dynamics in the past. The fascinating rivalry of Alfred and Robert in The Prestige, Leonard intentionally living a lie in Memento. Even though half the cast of Inception are as interesting as sandpaper, I still really like Cobb and his grief through his wife's suicide. I also like this guy, he's pretty cool. And how about Dunkirk, which has practically no dialogue, so the spectacle plays a bigger part? There are inverses to this, which is why I love Heath Ledger's Joker. And look, he's been talked about to death, I know, but he's a character that exudes an energy that The Dark Knight really needs, and delivers on dialogue that, yeah, can in some instances fall into just telling us his character's psychology, but also can tell us about the character in creative ways that I don't see too often in Nolan films. For example, the first time we see him, he tells someone how he got the scars. You think, okay, he's just telling us his backstory. Then later we see him tell another person how he got them, only this time he tells a completely different story, and you can see from his mannerisms, he's just kind of making these up on the spot. Rather than just telling and telling and telling, and I still don't get it. The Dark Knight seems like it's telling us what we need to know, only to circumvent that and show us that it's all one big mystery, which is very fitting for a character who's built on having his origin be multiple choice. There are things I really like here. I love Memento because it doesn't fall into clunky exposition too much, has pretty genuine characters, and thrives off of its non-linear narrative in a way where I don't feel like I have to know everything to enjoy this movie. Similarly to Prestige, the best Christopher Nolan movie, it fully embraces being a non-linear narrative, giving us parts of the story out of order, and at the end, hitting us with this plot twist that ties it together while still leaving the movie as one big illusion. Something about this approach feels more consistent to me. Despite all this, I do still like Christopher Nolan's movies individually. At their core, they're generally pretty good and well made. So why don't I like Oppenheimer? Throughout this video, it was more so me talking about Nolan's films as a whole, but Oppenheimer is in the title, and I did a little bit through the video say that Oppenheimer did this aspect a bit better, or this or that. So why don't I like it, but I like all these movies? I guess I just don't like this type of story it's trying to tell. The things that other Nolan movies have going for it is that it'll always hit you with a wild concept. I am a sucker for Victorian era media, and adding some hints of sci-fi on top of that is why I love The Prestige. I love Memento and like Inception because entering dreams and having a character have a crisis over losing their memory are cool concepts. The Dark Knight movies have Batman. I really like Batman. I don't really like biographical films that much, and this film is definitely not too complicated, but is very, very dense, and probably the most dialogue-heavy Nolan film I've seen so far. And yeah, one of the main reasons I don't like Nolan's films is his dialogue. To top it all off, it was just a little too long, and I just kinda gave up on keeping up with the film. I'm sorry. Now, don't take this video as fact. There might have been some things I was wrong about. Maybe I don't understand his movies that much. Maybe I'm being unfair to Oppenheimer, so talk to me. Tell me in the comments what made you love Oppenheimer. Tell me the things or little observations about the movie to help me gain a better connection with the movie. Tell me if my analogy on Inception made any sense or not. Feel free to tell me what you thought, because I may have not been in the best headspace to watch Oppenheimer or given it my fullest attention. All I know is that I did not like this movie, and I don't like the way this guy makes movies. So here is a clip from Trash Taste to sum up my thoughts on Oppenheimer.
I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, it's for those anime fans that think that they're really intelligent and want something deep.
Your IQ wasn't high
but
enough.
At the end, there's this category of shows, and to me, I took one look at Sonny Boy and I was like, oh, this is what fucking Reddit anime fans are gonna be like. This is the best anime of the year, actually.
But Barbie was like super good. Like I really liked that one. That was a really good movie.